Okay, I think we're live. I've tried 3 times. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Weekly Wild, and I am 18 minutes late because it kept cutting out. So, but I'm determined to do this. Welcome, and I hope you're having a lovely Sunday morning. It's been a crazy week here in ways. We'll talk about that. First, let's do our invocation for this week. So thank you to anyone who is joining me. For some reason, Facebook is not showing me comments. So please feel free to message me and comment anyway, please. From the comments, the people who comment, they are going to get something, which I'll tell you about in a second. So let's start here. All right. I'm taking these from this book. I just think it's a really cool book. All right. And this has to do with, this week I was talking with a lot of people about how to be happy, we can't forget that we're also creatures of the earth, and that we have to remember that as we're moving through our lives, whether facing trauma or disruption or whatever. We also have to kind of remember that we live on the face of an earth. Kind of like as we look down on the ants, if we were up in space, we would be looking down on ourselves. Okay. This is by Lou Welch. Sausalito, Little Willow, perfect beach by the last bay in the world. None more beautiful. Today, we kneel at thy feet and curse the men who have misused you. Okay. Well, welcome. I faced myself this morning really hard. I don't know if you've ever had the experience of, oh, I'm going to cry. I don't know why. I don't know if you've ever had the experience of like going to a new place, moving, starting a new job, all of those new threshold things. I'm going to check my phone real quick and make sure somebody isn't telling me that they can't hear me or something. Okay. Hang on. All right. Thank you, Joe Carroll, for sharing my frustration. But I grew up moving kind of all over the United States. My dad was a pastor, and he's still alive. He just isn't a pastor anymore, except like a sub. And I remember, especially as I got older, we moved, I think, 14 times, and we lived in all of the O states. I'll let you think through that and wake up this morning thinking of states. But we lived like in very different areas of the United States. And I remember thinking, oh, this place, like especially going from, I think, Ohio to okay, we're trying again. I'm watching to see if Facebook is going to let this go. I don't know why it's having a problem with this again. But hello again for the 15th time this morning. Maybe they won't kick me off. Let's have fingers crossed. Okay. I'm trying to get it where I don't know why it's not showing me comments anymore. It's bizarre. So I'm just gonna read your comments later, and then we can have a conversation in the comments if that's okay with you. It literally was working and then it's not. And so let me see if, just looking real quick. Interactivity. Nope. Okay. So I was telling you about how I moved around a lot. So we moved from Oregon to, oh, I told you one of the O things. I lived in all of the O states and several others growing up. My father was a pastor. And I remember being fairly young, like at least in middle school, and thinking, this time, I am going to be a better me. Like I'm not good enough how I am. And so I'm going to go into this situation and I'm going to be a better me this time. I'm going to be more outgoing. I'm going to talk to people. I was very introverted and scared. I was a scared little bunny. I was pretty good at hiding that, even though I was just very shy. I got very good at hiding being shy, you know. Maybe, I don't know. Somebody I've known since then tell me if I really did hide it. Probably didn't. However, I remember that feeling. I'm gonna be better. And I have never been good at being that person who does something on the daily, every day, or, you know, you commit to something and you do it every single time. Now, children, you know, I think that's actually a lie that I've been telling myself. Wow. I wish my therapist were watching. Because I think that was a lie. Well, I'm letting go of the lie, especially here. And I hesitated so long before doing this thing, before deciding to show up every single week, because I could feel old Jene and judgy Jene saying, no, you shouldn't overcommit because you know you suck at this. And this morning I've been kicked off of this 3 or 4 times, and there's still glitches. I know how to do tech. I asked my 18-year-old son something about this whole process and stuff. And, you know, he was doing the thing where you think, oh, well, I need to back up 8 steps and I'm going to show her how to do this. And I just wanted to smack him, which I didn't smack him, but I told him, I was like, no, I really do know how to do it. It's just not, there's something wonky, you know. I guess I can learn every day. But I remember that feeling of saying, I'm going to be better. I'm going to be a better person. I'm going to be perfect. And this is really exciting a lot of those same feelings. And I don't know if it's an insecurity, but it's almost like a test. How much have you actually changed as a person? You know, we all think that we let things go and that we've matured or grown out of that, or processed, you know, whatever caused something. And therapy and that kind of modality often uses this example of a spiral. You know, we're not on a straight line. This is very apropos if you know me and my book and my love of spirals. I feel like it's like the most essential symbol in existence. But they say that, you know, you pass something by and you oh, here, I'll do it like this, and you get over it, but then eventually you kind of come back around, and the spiral is wider and it's not as maybe intense the second time or fifth time that we pass something or deal with something or feel a feeling, but it's usually there. And this is actually, I considered for about 5 seconds going, technical difficulties. I can't do the live today. But I didn't, because I'm going to do this if I'm in the middle of another country someday, on the road or whatever. Okay? So, yeah. Second thing today, I'm going to do, I hope that you hear me and hear my heart in this, that this, what I am about to say, and I hate caveats, but I'm doing it anyway. There was another one. This is not a political statement for me, but I waited to get my booster until tomorrow so that I wouldn't be sick for you this morning. I'm hoping that all of any side effects are done by next Sunday. Please get vaccinated and boosted. Way back a year and a half ago, I sounded like a doomsdayer when I was saying that people needed to wear masks. And 3 months later, 2 months later, the science came in, and I know I'm going to sound like a doomsdayer right now, and I know you're sick of hearing it, but that whole Omicron thing is a real deal, and we need to take care of each other. So I hope to see you all in person someday, but now is not the time, and I hope you'll go and do that for yourself. Okay, so third thing, I am going to give away a copy of my book this week, and I am going to do so until my last few copies of my first print run are done. I am working on changing the cover a bit, because it doesn't really describe the feeling of how the book is. It describes one part of the feelings. That's me. That's my book. First book. And so I hope that you will comment and ask me questions, and tell me something you want to talk about next week, or you want to discuss, or you can tell I'm a Libra because I'm trying to be even in the camera. Anyway, so comment, and I'll be drawing a name from the people who do so. Let's see. I'm looking at all of my stuff. So I'm going to talk about a couple of things today. The first thing is just out of what happened like this week. So Colorado, I mean, if you watch any news, you probably heard about the windstorms in Colorado and the Midwest and West this week. Wednesday, I think it was Wednesday, a windstorm blew through Colorado Springs, where I am, and I had to go pick up my youngest son from high school, which is about usually a 10-minute drive from here, and I just happened to have to pick him up at the peak of the windstorm, which was about at noon, 12:31, and I'm used to judging myself for how much I hate driving on snow and ice. I usually have to manage my lead foot in everyday driving, especially on highways and stuff. However, when weather imposes itself on my driving, I kind of turn into this crotchety, curmudgeonly grandma type. Like, go slower and put your lights on. And if you heard me in the car, I'm a different person. Anybody who's ridden with me, I give you permission to comment and tell the truth. It will be embarrassing, but it's true. I cuss like a sailor. I'm snarky, judgy, bitchy, the whole thing. As long as people can't hear me. But Wednesday, it was like, A few years ago, we had massive fires in the area, and I had to get to a friend's house to pick up some stuff for her. I think it was her cat and some other stuff. And she was one hill away from the fire. And so as I drove into her neighborhood, there was ash falling from the sky. And so it was super intense and scary. This time, I wasn't so much afraid of where the fire was going to be, but I was afraid that the wind would tip over my Chevy Tahoe. And it's a big vehicle and not super high profile. You know, it's got some heft to it, but I had to stop several times on the way. Usually I just go one street, take one or two turns, and it's an easy peasy. But there were downed trees. Debris was flying everywhere. And the road that I normally take, I got halfway down and a tree had blocked the entire thing, and there was a cop blocking the route, so I had to turn back around and go all the way over to the west side. And then, like, it was a disaster. It was a disaster kind of a feeling, because I think my route got blocked 3 times on the way back to taking him to his dad's, and once on the way there. And it took 2 or 3 times the amount of time because of that. And on the one hand, I've been really feeling into this experience, because and then I got home and I lost power. And I lost power for 51 hours. So I didn't get back until yesterday. Was it yesterday? Day before yesterday. Friday, like late afternoon. And it was cold. It was really cold. Thank God it wasn't super cold. Like our normal Decembers, we're going to have 60 this week. I don't know what's going on. I mean, we all do know what's going on. But, yeah, like I slept here because I didn't want to leave my cat alone, you know, and now I'm kind of acclimated to a colder house, which is nice. But it was disruptive. It was surprisingly emotional. As I was driving to the high school, I called if you don't know yet, my ex and I are good friends, and we've always like parented together and stuff. And so I called him, and my voice was shaking, trying to make it through all of the obstacles that the wind was putting up, in a very, like, you hear it on the news, but until you're in the middle of, 40 mile an hour winds with 80 to 100 mile an hour gusts, and it's not really real until you're like in it, right? And my voice was shaking, and I was scared, I was scared. And what happened in the moment when I had to stop the very last time, I thought of all of the disaster movies that I like watching. I'm writing a post-apocalyptic sci-fi novel. And so I watch disaster movies to see how people think that we would handle it, right? And I dream my entire life. I often dream in like Technicolor end of the world kind of movie dreams since I was very small. And I'm always in the resistance. I'm leading. I'm going into the danger. I'm saying, when I watch the movies, I'm like, no, they should have done that. They should have done that. Okay, we're going to do this. If that were me, I would be doing this. And as I was sitting on the side of the road, I realized, what? Who are you? Like, who is this girl who is scared to push forward? I'm going to cry. Who is scared to push forward into just wind. Okay, wind is a real deal, and it was huge, and it knocked out power for, 35,000 people in our metro area. All of my older neighbors, like, it was intense, and it was real, and it was hard to handle the power outage. But I was suddenly smacked in the face with, who have I become? Like, I'm not acting like the person that I know myself to be. I'm not acting like the person that I've always thought myself to be. And my ex, he was like, I'll just pick him up. And I said, no, you don't need to do that. I'm over halfway there, even with all the detours, and no, I'm gonna go do it. And I got there, and there were at least 2 downed trees at the high school, and it's going insane. There are cops everywhere. It was insane. And then on our way back, I mean, where I had driven on, it's called Uinta. It's a street just a little ways away, and where I had driven through less than half an hour before, there was a felled tree across and a live power line dangling, right where I had driven. And by the way, deep empathy and love to everyone who is still experiencing a power outage, but also those people who have trees in their yards. Oh my God, so many trees. It looks like a disaster zone out there. It's getting better. People are, things are getting cleaned up, but it was intense, man. And I was cold. I was really cold and kind of stressed out. I had to move all of my refrigerated stuff to my ex's, and thank God my freezer didn't, like, I had bought groceries like 2 days before, and so I had a fridge full of stuff, and luckily I had packed my freezer so full that it acted like a cooler, so I didn't lose a whole lot of freezer food and food in general. But I'm very glad to have heat. But it also made me really realize, throughout human history, right? Now we only read about it in stories in the U.S., in the developed nations. Other nations, if you're some of my friends in other countries where you experience this, you can just laugh, okay? I give you permission to laugh at me, because quite often, going traveling, you don't have the comforts that we have come to expect, and even having them in your own home, so that, being unshowered and dirty and like just exhausted and cold all the time. Can you imagine the bliss of like a bathhouse or a friend's house that has running water and a shower? And I've been in some of those situations before, and the bliss that comes with hot water is atavistic, I think, if I'm using that word properly. I love that word, atavistic. It's such a creature feeling to be immersed or drenched in hot water. And I think heat is kind of the same way, right? When I got home the night before last and my heat was on, my neighbor had texted me, I immediately turned the heater on and, watched the temperature climb from 51, I think it was, to 68. And I was actually kind of hot. But it didn't just feel warm. It felt safe. And I'm all about taking risks in a managed way. But in those moments in the moments of this entire week of having my everyday life, my home life disrupted, I can't imagine. I can't. The magnitudes beyond what I just experienced that people are experiencing right now in being displaced from their homes. I just experienced the barest whisper of a privileged white person's experience of having a home that suddenly didn't have heats. Big whoop, right? Pain is pain. Emotional experiences, everybody has them. So I'm not saying that I shouldn't feel things or that you shouldn't feel things when everyday life gets disrupted. My God, the impact of that, right? We can only feel those little hints of how others feel when they get kicked out of their homes in situations like this. And then just going out and seeing, having to stop at intersections where the lights were out for 2 days. And I mean, here in Colorado, we're all sunshine addicts. Like, we get cranky if it's cloudy for longer than a day and a half. And I could feel this community distress with the disruption from the storm. I could feel, it was almost like, and I will be cussing on this thing. I was like, I don't know what I'm looking at. I'm like looking at, is there a cussing setting? Is there a cussing set? No, there's not. But I could feel this collective fuck it. Like, fuck it. I'm just going to go through this light. And if somebody wants to stop me, fine. Like, it was intense to drive out when, like, both in the daytime and at night. I think the second night I was so tired of cold food that I went across town, like over to the west side, and there were whole swaths of neighborhoods that were still dark. And every now and then there would be lights that, traffic lights that were not working. And just the people driving, they were acting very, they were acting like creatures who had gotten things taken away from them. Like the norm, the norm was gone. And it was, again, just the barest hint of what we see in post-apocalyptic disaster movies. But it was interesting to experience it that way. I am thankful for the Colorado Springs utilities. The last thing I'm going to say about this, I've been talking forever about it, but I called the utilities to let them know that a big, huge branch had fallen on the power line that goes from the pole to my house, thinking that maybe that was the problem. And then a truck came by, and these two utilities workers, they said, we're sorry, we're not going to fix that yet because it's too minor a problem with everything. And I said, well, I don't know if that's what's causing my power outage. And they stopped and they said, your power is still out? And I said, yeah, so is theirs. So is theirs. I was like pointing to all my neighbors who I knew their power was out. And they were shocked and they said, okay, we'll go back around and check it again. And that set them on the path of, oh, there's a much bigger power outage in this, like one of the oldest neighborhoods in Colorado Springs. And nobody, all of the indicators had shown that, like, it wasn't being communicated, in other words, between the headquarters and the trucks, right? And so, I'm going to take a little drink here. And so they, they did that. And so I called a little later to the utilities company because, my God, I was raised not to be a squeaky wheel, right? But they didn't know. And they didn't know because of that thing, right? Don't make a ruckus, be nice, don't make a big deal. I will talk, eventually I'm going to rant about the cult of no big deal. That's what I call it. It's a cult. Anyway, but yeah, so when something like this happens, we have to communicate to the people who are in charge of fixing it, and I have let go, and I will never again assume that they know. So Fist bump. Call those motherfuckers! Just kidding. Okay. I told you that I would tell you about one of my favorite books every week. And I'm going to do this. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a tiny little break here to look on my phone. That's what I'll do. And see if any of you have commented. Hopefully you're not like, shut up! For those of you joining now or watching the replay, the very first video where I filmed it with my phone, so I look completely blonde, so weird, because I'm not. I explained what I'm doing here, and that is from my inner self and my core. Just said, open your mouth, girl, and just talk. So I look forward to this being much more of an interactive thing when I can bring back my comments. I'm going to test it several times this week to make sure that that's finally working so that I can talk with you all while this is going on. This is not just, a completely rambling kind of a thing. So I'm going to look here on my phone and see if... Okay. No comments. So, Deb, besides Deb, thank you and hi. Okay. So, I got this book from the library, gosh, years ago. And I did it because I had this big, huge plan for my backyard that I was going to do an elaborate garden thing. And I did have a big garden at one point, but I haven't done it in a while. But I found this book. It is called Garden and Climate by Chip Sullivan. And what it is this magnificent collection of gardens and garden features and garden techniques and garden tools from all over the world and throughout human history. And you can see, so it has these amazing pencil drawings throughout. For example, this right here is showing like how to site your house for passive heat and light. There are things in here like wet walks, so in a very hot area you build it where water drains across a walkway so that it humidifies and cools that walk in the summers. South-facing patios so that you have a sun trap in the winter so that you can hang out outside. One of my favorite things that I learned in this book, I'll just do this so you can kind of see. See, it's throughout. Like drawings, how to, the history, photos, all kinds of things. So one of the really cool things that I learned in this book, and I'll say it again, Garden and Climate by Chip Sullivan, is that the architectural style of, like in the Middle East, but really any hot, historically hot area of the world, you'll have buildings with downstairs a bottom floor that has archways and court, like open areas underneath, all around the building. And quite often, big structures, they'll have, okay, wait, let's see. I have to do that right. Here's the building, and underneath there are all these open areas with arches and stuff. And then here's a a pool, a shallow pool. And what they would do is you'll see poles at the corners closest to the house. And what they would do is they would attach long strips of fabric across and to the pool so that when the wind came in, it would go across the water and then under the fabric and cool the house like a big swamp cooler. But you can do passive things like that, and it's not so much, this isn't like a climate change kind of a bug. This is a, how do we deal with climate in our everyday lives and with our home. I love it. I look at it when I go to sleep because I find it fascinating. So, okay, last thing. So, I don't want to name names or anything about this, but a lot of you know, the reason this is called Church of Wild is because I was a Nazarene pastor's daughter and grew up in the evangelical church in the United States. And I sing, and I was on stage, and I taught Sunday school classes, and I believed deeply and sincerely in the doctrine of my church. I have always been someone who wanted to get at the root of things and question and look at things in a way that how does this impact how I drive, how I am at the grocery store, how I am with my family, all of those things. And that's a process, because I'm like, my brain is rolling through some things that I really want to do to be better, But I have that, I did leave the church quite a while ago because I was uncomfortable with what the organization itself had become. People ask me, do you have faith now? What are your beliefs? And it's a tough question. I have had many heated discussions with my son about the fact that I don't feel that I can prove God either way, that he's not real, that she is real, whatever. That the closest thing I think I get to faith is believing that there's flow and that we're here, and that we're here to care for ourselves and each other, and anything that contradicts caring for myself or others feels wrong. However, being in the church so long, and I went to a Christian college, and I was planning on being a missionary. I love church history. I love the ancient languages. I like the original languages for any literature, not just like the Bible and stuff. But I can joke. I'm not joking. When I don't really drink ever, but when I did, if I get like just enough alcohol, I will talk theology until the day is long. So sorry for all those people that I did that to. But on this, one of the points of the Church of Wild is that I know that I need to turn some things upside down. And when I look at the church, and by church I mean the broad church, mostly the evangelical American Christian church, okay? Some things are parallels, but I'm really pointing that way. I see some major problems. And this week I was impacted by one in an interesting way, and I almost never respond and spend my energy trying to convince people or change or whatever. I really believe that we are on our own paths. If you and I talk ever, or if you check out my website, I'm doing like consulting coaching as well. I mean, I'll give you advice, but I've had people give me so much advice that I didn't follow. So, I'm not going to try and change the whole church. And I have deep respect for people with faith and all kinds of faith. And, I'm not trying to go there. However, I tend to hold, especially Christians who are leaders, at the front of, on a podium. I'm going to hold you to a higher standard. I'm going to take you at your word. I'm going to hold you to the highest standard by which you judge everything else. And I know that system, so I'm going to hold it to a higher standard. And there's this thing that's been around for decades, probably longer, probably since the church began. But it got a label in the 70s, I think, of friendship evangelism, relational evangelism. This is how I was raised. Here are the basic tenets. You do not become friends, become best friends, good friends, lovers, married with someone who is not a Christian, unless you are trying to save them. And the phrase is, bring them to Christ. You do not yoke yourself to someone else because it will diminish your faith. It will put you in a risky situation. You may lose your faith. You're going to allow the influence of the devil into your life if you are too close to someone who isn't saved, who hasn't given themselves to Jesus completely, but more importantly, who isn't showing it by being in the church all the time and how you should be. And so friendship evangelism says there is always the agenda. If you want to be friends with somebody else who isn't a Christian, you always have the agenda of bringing them to Christ. Now, they wouldn't maybe you don't like the word agenda. We all have agendas, right? When sometimes we'll do things for networking. I get friend requests like that all the time, and I have occasionally done that as well. I do feel very strongly about it, and I have that kind of echo from church, and so I try not to friend people for who I think they can connect me to or get me or whatever. It just feels disingenuous. Again, not perfect. I'm not saying I am, but that act, right? We all we go to networking meetings or whatever. We're all human. Sometimes we do have agendas. I'm not saying it never happens in an okay way, a genuine way. But the big but is that in the church, it is a doctrine. It is a method. It is taught to young people to always have the agenda of bringing someone to church when you are going to interact with them. And I am going to be bold and brave and say, I think that's bullshit. And I think that, as I said a couple of times ago, if Jesus Christ, Christians like to say, what would Jesus do? If Jesus Christ were standing next to someone who only talked to a non-Christian because he thought that he could bring him or her to Christ, I think he would call bullshit. Now, there's this story that is used to justify this doctrine. When Jesus was hanging out and with the tax collectors and prostitutes, the Pharisees, who no Christian wants to be associated with the Pharisees. They were the politicians. They were the super strict ones of the religious establishment then. So, at least growing up, maybe it's changed. I don't know. But everybody, what you'll find, right, is they're like, oh, don't be like the Pharisees. And then in this instance, it's okay, right? So the Pharisees say, why are you hanging out with all of these people? Why are you eating with them? You're sharing food with the people who are most reviled in our society, the sinners. You're hanging out with the sinners. And Jesus says, it is not these are paraphrases, it is not those who are well who need me. It is those who are sick who need me. Now, before I talked about this, I meant to look up the original languages, and perhaps I will for next week. I will bring you a textual analysis, an exegesis of that statement. But I recall in Christian scripture how there is a sense of irony to his statement. Because he laid into the Pharisees later. He laid into the church establishment later and upended it. That was part of why he was such a controversial figure. He said, you guys are not the ones who don't need me. You are actually the ones who do. And so there's a sense of irony that comes across as he's saying, no, these guys don't have it all together, so they're going to need me. But what the modern church takes from that is A, Jesus was judging the prostitutes and the tax collectors and the sinners for what they were, the trash they were, the wounded and the broken and the worthless that they were. And he was hanging out with them because they need him. And he's not with me. He doesn't want to hang out with the Pharisees because they're fine. And the modern church associates with that and says, I'm fine. I'm fine. Jesus just needs to hang out with the sinners and those people because they need him. As a vector, as a purpose, as an agenda. In their minds, he was only hanging out with them because they were so bad and because he was so great. And thus, the only reason you would ever want to associate with anyone who isn't in the church is because they are so low and so wrong. And so your agenda must always be fix them, bring them to Christ. And I'm going to stand on my little soapbox and say, I think that's completely cockeyed. No, that is not what he was saying. And that is not how he lived. And we can go into, who Jesus was. Did he really live? All of those things, okay? I'm responding to this story in the Bible about Jesus as if it were all true, right? And not written by a bunch of men who didn't even meet him, okay? So we'll get into that later. But this story in particular is the justification for what's called friendship evangelism. And if someone believes this, it means that there's always an agenda when they are interacting with people who are not in the church. And I'm fundamentally against it. And I know in my gut and in my heart that if Jesus were standing right here and he were listening to what I'm saying, or he saw it happening, he would say, "What the fuck is wrong with you? Why can't you just care about people?" Why can't you just care about people without an agenda? Who judges? How do you know what is inside someone's heart? Is there evil? Yes. Is there massive wrongdoing all the time? Yeah. Do I want to hang out with the guy who keeps parking his vehicles that are untagged like it's a car lot on the side of my property? Not really. Do I judge him for being kind of an asshole? Yeah. But another part of me is like, God, we're all just trying to make it through this time in history and make a little money, enough to eat, you know? Jesus would be appalled at how this one sentence has turned into an entire industry of friendship evangelism. It is one of the most sickening phrases that I think I have ever known. Why can't we just care about people and connect and relate to each other? And if we don't connect, fine. Say, I honor your right to live. I honor who you are. You know, until you're hurting somebody, and then I'm going to try and stop it. But if I were still a Christian, I know. Well, it's never made sense to me. It's always felt disingenuous. And I have tons of flaws, and, you know, we could have a flaw day where I just list all of them for you. So, but this has always really rubbed me the wrong way. And I had a best friend when I lived in Oregon. I lived in Oregon 8th and 9th grade. And my best friend, Stacy, oh my God, if you're out there, Stacy Wyatt from Roseburg, Oregon, hi. But she was my first non-Christian friend. She was a Mormon, but back then it was much more like, at least according to Nazarenes, you know, like Mormons weren't Christians, and it was really complicated. Excuse me. And so she was never, she wouldn't necessarily have been somebody that my parents or my church would have said, like, yay, you know. But I still have this amazing little booklet she gave me for my birthday. And I didn't care. She was just my friend. I wasn't trying to save her. And I'm over it. Somebody messaged me this week, and I could tell I am pretty sensitive to attempts at saving me. But it wasn't even so much that. I was kind of appalled that this practice, this doctrine, is still being taught as a good method to convince people to become Christians. Hi, how you doing? You know, Jesus, he met needs first, and then he asked people to follow him. So that's a better method for me. Seek out the needs and meet them with no agenda. Maybe you want to share your faith in love and care, and I get that. I'm saying these words in love and care, and hopefully as a little bit of cold water to call all of us to just connect, like Audre Lorde said. It's only connection. Maybe next week I will have all of my glitches fixed, and I'll go into why I think that's actually both theologically and emotionally and philosophically true, that it's only connection, but also kind of scientifically true, materially true, energetically true. That may we only connect, right? So that's my rant. Wow. Thank you. Whether you're listening or rolling your eyes or hate me or whatever. Okay, I'm going to see if there are any comments. One new comment. And I'm looking on my phone, so sorry not to show you. Okay? I think I will, I'm going to comment below this with some links and stuff. I would deeply appreciate, okay, Deb, I think it's all, hang on. Yep, okay. Well, I'll be letting you know who gets the copy. I'll be sending it to you or bringing it over this week. And last thing for today. Yeah. We'll talk about some science-y things next week and connecting. And I just want you to know, my Facebook family, that I remember the first time I had heard of Facebook. It's a complicated relationship right now because of its corporate nature and everything. But this friend of mine, Shiny, hi, she was talking about like this platform that she connected with her friends over around the world, and they would throw sheep at each other. And it was so innocent back then, right? But through the years, you have all been with me as I lost my mom and pushed out and did crazy things. And I just want you to know that I feel that strongly and gratefully. And I appreciate connecting here. As flawed as it has become in ways, I love connecting with you here, and I appreciate who you are and learning from you with your posts and how we interact. So I hope you have a wonderful week. I'm gonna quit talking now, man. It's been a long one. And I hope you all are safe and warm and have power where you are. And I'll see you next week. Bye. The awkward moments. See, it's still going. And of course I want to